The October sun bathed the streets of Westridge with that particular golden light of Massachusetts autumn. Tyler Mitchell, a 17-year-old student at Westridge High School, walked with determined steps toward the Central Mall. His afro was freshly trimmed, and he wore a navy blue polo shirt under a light jacket, a deliberate choice for this special day. He had saved up for 5 whole months, stashing away every penny from his weekend shifts at Brewington's Cafe and the extra math tutoring he gave to elementary school students. It wasn't easy to balance studies, extracurricular activities, and still find time to work, but Tyler had a special motivation. His 12-year-old sister Emily's birthday was coming the next week, and he wanted to give her something truly meaningful. Emily had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 2 years earlier, and the transition had not been easy for anyone in the family. Suddenly, the cheerful and carefree girl had to learn about blood sugar, measurements, insulin doses, and dietary restrictions, a responsibility far too heavy for a child. But what hurt Tyler the most was seeing how some of the schoolmates treated her differently, as if her condition made her fragile or incapable. He knew his sister better than anyone. He knew she was the strongest and most resilient person he had ever met. When he passed by the display window of Silverstone, the mall's most elegant jewelry store, his eyes immediately caught the sparkle of a delicate silver bracelet with a butterfly pendant. Emily loved butterflies. For her, they symbolized transformation and freedom, exactly what she needed to feel during this phase. Tyler stopped in front of the window, mentally calculating once again whether the $250 he had saved would be enough. He knew that Silverstone was not the kind of store he normally frequented. It was known to cater to Westridge's wealthier clientele, the families who lived in the exposed brick houses in the northern part of town. The Mitchell family lived on the east side, in a modest but comfortable house, maintained on his mother Diana's teacher salary and the occasional technology consultancy jobs his father Marcus managed to get. They were never poor, but they also didn't have the kind of income that allowed frequent purchases at stores like Silverstone. Still, Tyler straightened his posture, patted the pocket where his wallet with the carefully folded money was kept, and pushed open the glass door of the store. Determined to give this gift to his sister, a discreet bell announced his entry into the jewelry store, a sound that seemed to clash with the reverent silence of the environment. The interior of Silverstone was exactly as Tyler had imagined. Strategic lighting that made every piece sparkle like miniature stars, impeccably clean light gray carpeting, and glass showcases so polished they seemed invisible. The aroma was a mixture of expensive perfume and noble wood. 3 salespeople attended to. Clients, a middle-aged couple was examining engagement rings, an elderly lady with a pearl necklace was adjusting a watch on her wrist, and a young executive was pointing at a pair of earrings while talking on the phone. Tyler took a deep breath, trying to ignore the way his heart raced. There was nothing wrong with being there. He was a customer like any other. The money in his pocket was just as valid as anyone else's in that store. Walking confidently, he approached the counter where no one was being attended to. A saleswoman of approximately 40 years lifted her eyes from the computer screen. Her badge identified her as Patricia Winters, sales consultant. Her blue eyes, cold as a winter day outside, scanned Tyler from head to toe in a quick and unmistakable evaluation. Her professional smile faltered for a moment so brief that any inattentive onlooker might not have noticed, but Tyler did. He recognized that look. He had seen it many times before. It was the barely disguised surprise of someone who did not expect to see a casually dressed young black man in such an establishment. "Can I help you?" Patricia asked, her voice carrying a tone that awkwardly floated between rehearsed courtesy and subtle distrust. Her hands discreetly moved below the counter, a gesture almost imperceptible, but one that Tyler interpreted as her placing her finger near the emergency button, a needless precaution that made him swallow hard. But Tyler was determined not to let that moment ruin his purpose. He had faced situations like this before, such as when the municipal library's security followed him between the shelves for an entire afternoon of study, or when the pharmacy attendant asked to check the contents of his backpack after he bought just a soft drink. His mother had taught him to keep his composure in these moments, to speak clearly and never, ever allow others' prejudice to determine how he felt about himself. "Good afternoon," he replied, keeping his voice firm and polite. "I'm interested in the silver bracelet with the butterfly pendant displayed in the window. It's a present for my little sister." Tyler pointed to the piece he had admired in the window. Patricia followed his gaze, and something in her expression changed. Not exactly for the better, but toward a cautious curiosity. "That one costs $275, she informed him, emphasizing the value as if it were a test, an insurmountable barrier. Tyler felt a knot in his stomach. It was $25 more than he had calculated based on the price displayed in the exterior showcase. He hesitated for just a second, weighing his options. He could use the extra $20 he had set aside to buy Emily her snack on the day of the gift delivery. Would it be worth it? "I understand." Tyler nodded, trying not to show his disappointment. "Still, I'd like to see it up close, please." Patricia hesitated briefly, as if evaluating the legitimacy of the request, before retrieving a small silver key from the pocket of her impeccably pressed blazer. She unlocked the display case with precise movements and removed the bracelet, placing it on a black velvet square on the counter between them. Tyler leaned in to examine the piece more carefully. It was even more beautiful up close. The 9-25 silver formed delicate links that shimmered under the directed light, and the butterfly pendant had tiny details on its wings that captured and reflected the light like minuscule rainbows. It was perfect. He could already imagine Emily's face lighting up when she saw it. He could picture how she would wear it proudly at school, a constant reminder that she was more than her medical condition. "May I hold it?" Tyler asked politely, keeping his hands visible on the counter, conscious of how every move of his seemed to be under scrutiny. Patricia gave a tense smile before nodding. "Be careful," she warned, her tone carrying a severity Tyler doubted she reserved for all customers. "It is a delicate piece." He extended his hand and took the bracelet with extreme care, feeling the light, cool weight of the metal between his fingers. As he examined it, he gently rotated it to see how the light danced across its polished surfaces. It was at that moment that it happened. A reflexive movement, an involuntary reaction upon hearing the doorbell announcing the arrival of new customers. The bracelet slipped from his fingers and fell onto the glass counter with a metallic clink, sliding toward the edge. Tyler reacted instinctively, moving quickly to catch it before it hit the floor, but the damage was already done. Patricia let out a sharp exclamation that drew everyone's attention in the store. "What do you think you're doing?" Her voice rose abruptly, laden with an accusation that cut through the store's air conditioning like a knife. Her face transformed from distrust to absolute certainty, as if she had just confirmed her worst suspicions. "You are trying to steal that piece." Her words sounded like a whip, causing Tyler to freeze, his hand still extended, the bracelet now secured between his fingers, hovering centimeters above the floor. He felt his throat tighten, a wave of heat rising along his neck to his face as he realized all the eyes in the store were fixed on him. It was not merely embarrassment. It was humiliation. It was injustice. It was that painfully familiar feeling of being instantly labeled a criminal because of the color of his skin. "No, Tyler began to explain, his voice momentarily betraying him as he slowly stood up, carefully placing the bracelet back on the counter, as if handling a bomb about to explode. But Patricia was no longer listening. She had already reached for the counter phone, her eyes never leaving Tyler, as if he were about to try to flee at any moment. "I'm calling security," she announced, not only to him but to the entire store, as if warning other customers of an imminent danger. Tyler felt his stomach drop. It was happening again. That familiar nightmare his mother had always tried to prepare him for, yet it still caught him off guard every time. The worst part was not the accusation itself, but the certainty with which it was made. The unwavering conviction in Patricia's eyes that a young black man in an expensive store could only be there to steal, never as a legitimate customer. "Please, ma'am, there's been a misunderstanding." Tyler tried again, his voice regaining some firmness despite the knot in his throat. "The bracelet slipped accidentally. I was just trying to catch it before it hit the floor." But his words seemed to evaporate in the cold air of the store, unable to penetrate the barrier of Patricia's conviction. One of the other salespeople, a bald man of about 50, abandoned his client and quickly approached, positioning himself alongside Patricia as an unnecessary reinforcement. against an imaginary threat. "What's going on here?" he asked, his deep voice carrying the same presumptuous authority. Before Tyler could respond, Patricia intervened. "He tried to steal one of our most expensive pieces, Stanley. Caught him in the act. I already called security." The man's expression hardened, crossing his arms as he glared at Tyler as if he were a known criminal. The injustice of the situation was suffocating. Tyler couldn't believe that something as simple as buying a gift for his sister could turn into this nightmare. He thought of his father, Marcus, and the many conversations they had about how to navigate such situations. Keep calm, look them in the eyes, speak clearly, and know your rights. The mantra his father repeated ever since Tyler was too young to fully understand why such advice was necessary. He took a deep breath, feeling his phone vibrate in his pocket. Probably his mother asking if he had already bought the gift. An idea formed in his mind. "May I make a call?" he asked, keeping his voice firm despite the tremor that threatened to betray him. Patricia let out a dry, almost disdainful laugh. "Of course not," she replied, as if it were the most absurd request she had ever heard. "You are going to wait here until security arrives." At that moment, the double doors of the store's private elevator opened, and a burly man in a dark blue uniform bearing the mall's logo advanced with heavy steps toward the counter. Scott Reynolds, as indicated by his badge, was the head of security at Westridge Mall, known for his rigid and often disproportionate approach to suspects, especially those resembling Tyler. "What's the problem here?" Reynolds asked, his hand already instinctively resting on the holster of the taser at his waist. His eyes narrowed, fixed on Tyler. Patricia pointed an accusing finger, her voice laden with indignation. "This young man tried to steal a $275 bracelet. I saw him when he was about to put it in his pocket, and he tried to conceal it when he noticed I was watching." Tyler felt a wave of panic forming within him. The lie was so blatant, so absolute, that for a moment he was rendered speechless, shocked by how easily his reality was being rewritten before his eyes. "That's not true," Tyler finally said, his voice calmer than he felt inside. "The bracelet slipped from my hand when I got distracted by the sound of the door. I was just trying to catch it before it hit the floor." His eyes moved to the corners of the ceiling, searching for the security cameras that would surely have recorded everything in upscale stores like this one. There must be cameras that can show exactly what happened. Reynolds briefly followed his gaze before staring him again with renewed suspicion, as if the mention of the cameras were some sort of trick. Patricia quickly intervened. "It doesn't matter. I saw it with my own eyes. He was holding the bracelet and then moved his hand to his pocket. It's obvious what he was trying to do." The falsity of the accusation was so flagrant that Tyler felt indignation rise in his neck. "May I show that I have enough money to buy the bracelet?" Tyler argued, slowly moving his hand toward the pocket holding his wallet. Reynolds immediately stepped forward, his posture stiffening. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he ordered in a severe tone that made Tyler freeze. The humiliation burned in his chest. He was being treated like a dangerous criminal in front of a store full of people, many of whom now watched the scene with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. A woman pulled her small daughter closer, as if Tyler posed some kind of threat to their safety. Another customer, an elderly lady, shook her head in disapproval. No one intervened. No one questioned the narrative being constructed around him. Tyler knew he was in a dangerous situation. His mother had told him stories about how confrontations like this could escalate quickly, especially when authorities were involved with preconceived notions. He needed help, and he knew exactly whom to call. "Please, may I at least call my mother?" he asked, keeping his voice firm despite the tremor threatening to manifest. "She can confirm why I'm here, and that I have money to buy the bracelet." Reynolds hesitated, exchanging a look with Patricia that now seemed slightly less self-assured in light of Tyler's calm. After a moment of consideration, Reynolds nodded rigidly. "All right, but make the call right here where I can see, and put it on speakerphone," he added, as if Tyler could use the phone call to orchestrate some elaborate escape. With his hands slightly trembling, Tyler pulled his cell phone from his pocket and dialed his mother's number. Each ring of the phone seemed to last an eternity, as everyone in the store watched, some with expressions of pity, others with still evident suspicion. After what seemed like an eternity, The familiar, strong voice of Diana Mitchell filled the tense silence of the jewelry store. "Tyler, are you all right, son? Did you find the present for your sister?" His mother's voice, normally a comfort, now filled him with a complex mixture of relief and apprehension. "Mom," he began, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. "I'm at Silverstone in the mall. I need you to come here now. I'm having a problem." Diana immediately perceived the seriousness in her son's voice, even through the brief silence that followed his words. "What happened, Tyler?" Her voice changed subtly, adopting that professional tone Tyler knew well, the tone she used when she needed to manage difficult situations. Reynolds leaned toward the phone, as if he too wanted to insert himself into the conversation. "Ma'am, this is Scott Reynolds, head of security at Westridge Mall. Your son is being detained for attempted theft. I suggest you come as soon as possible to resolve this situation." The word detained made Tyler feel as though the ground had disappeared from beneath his feet. It was no longer just an accusation. Now he was being treated as a criminal, with no proof other than Patricia's word. The silence on the other end of the line lasted only 2 seconds, but it was laden with tension. When Diana spoke again, her voice was controlled, yet Tyler could detect the steel behind every word. "I understand. May I speak with my son privately?" Reynolds shook his head, even though Diana couldn't see him. "Unfortunately, that's not possible. We are keeping the phone on speaker for security reasons." Tyler saw his mother's lips pressed together on the other, and he knew she was holding back a much sterner response. "Very well," she continued calmly. "I will be there in 10 minutes. Until then, I request that no one interrogates my son or takes any further action. Tyler, don't say another word until I arrive." The next 10 minutes felt like the longest in Tyler's life. He stood motionless beside the counter, acutely aware of every glance directed at him, every whisper exchanged among customers, every movement by Reynolds, who continued to watch him as if he might attempt a dramatic escape at any moment. Patricia had stepped back slightly, busy adjusting some pieces in the showcases, but occasionally she would cast glances his way, not as confident as before, but still laden with suspicion. Tyler closed his eyes for a moment, mentally transporting himself away from there, to Sunday mornings when his family had breakfast together, to evenings playing board games with Emily, to conversations with his father about the future, about colleges, and dreams. The memory of his father calmed him somewhat. Marcus Mitchell always said that the truth, as hard as the journey toward it might be, would eventually prevail. When the doorbell announced someone's arrival, Tyler opened his eyes and felt a wave of relief as he saw his mother. Diana Mitchell entered Silverstone as if the place belonged to her, her medium stature radiating a presence that seemed to fill the entire space. Dressed in a structured navy blue blazer over a white blouse and dress pants, she moved with the confidence of someone used to commanding rooms full of people. Her eyes, identical to Tyler's, met his first, a silent communication of support, before turning to Reynolds. "I am Diana Mitchell," she introduced herself, her voice firm and clear. "Director of the Criminal Justice Department at the University of Massachusetts, and a specialized consultant on racial profiling in the justice system. Now, can someone please explain exactly what is happening with my son?" The atmosphere in the store shifted instantly. Reynolds, who until then had maintained an intimidating posture, seemed to shrink slightly under Diana's penetrating gaze. Patricia, who had stepped back to a safe distance, now approached the counter again as if feeling the need to defend her version of events before it was too late. "Ms. Mitchell," Reynolds began, his tone considerably more respectful, "we received a report that your son was trying to steal a piece of jewelry." Diana raised an eyebrow, a subtle gesture that Tyler knew well. It was the sign that her mother was meticulously recording every word, every inflection, every detail for later analysis. "A report? From whom?" she asked, though her eyes had already fixed on Patricia, who now looked significantly less sure of herself. Patricia stepped forward, adjusting her blazer as if it could somehow grant her the authority she was clearly losing. "I saw him," she stated, though her voice now carried a hesitation that hadn't been there before. He was holding the bracelet and made a quick movement toward his pocket. "I have years of experience in this line of work, and know a theft attempt when I see one." Diana listened patiently, her eyes never leaving Patricia's face, which was beginning to show signs of discomfort under that unyielding scrutiny. "I understand," Diana finally replied, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "And Silverstone has security cameras, I presume?" She looked up to the ceiling immediately, spotting the discreet surveillance cameras strategically positioned throughout the store. Reynolds intervened, clearly trying to regain some control over the situation. "Ma'am, I understand your concern as a mother, but you must understand that we are only following standard procedures when—" Diana raised a hand, interrupting him with a gesture both polite and firm. "Mr. Reynolds, I fully understand standard procedures. Part of my job is to critically assess these procedures and their selective application based on implicit biases. Now I would like to see the security camera footage immediately." It was not a request. It was an order, and everyone in the store, staff, customers, and especially Reynolds, seemed to sense that. The store manager, who until then had been observing the situation from a distance, finally approached. "I am Kevin Lawson, manager of Silverstone," he introduced himself, extending his hand to Diana. "Perhaps it would be better if we resolved this in the office away from the other customers." Diana briefly shook the offered hand, but her expression made it clear that she was not willing to negotiate. "Mr. Lawson, this situation began here, in front of all these customers. My son was publicly accused and humiliated. If the evidence proves he is innocent, and I am absolutely sure that it will, then it is only fair that his innocence be established publicly as well." She looked around at the faces of the customers who now observed the scene with intense interest, some clearly embarrassed by their role as silent witnesses. Kevin hesitated, aware that he was in a delicate position. A public confrontation could damage the store's reputation, but refusing Diana's request might result in even worse consequences. "Of course," he finally conceded, gesturing for an employee to bring a tablet. "Let's check the footage right away." A dense silence settled over the store as the employee returned with the tablet in hand, its screen already lit. Kevin Lawson took it cautiously, as if holding crucial evidence in a court of law. He tapped on the most recent recording and rewound to the exact moment when Tyler took the bracelet from Patricia's hands. The video, despite the slightly elevated angle, clearly showed the sequence of events. Everyone gathered around the counter. Diana stood by Tyler with her arms crossed and an unyielding expression. Reynolds still had one hand near his holster, but now he was noticeably less resolute, and Patricia, visibly tense, fixed her eyes on the video as if hoping for something different to appear in the footage. On the screen, Tyler could be seen accepting the bracelet with care, holding it with both hands clearly visible to everyone. The moment the store door opened and he got distracted was unmistakable. An involuntary movement, the bracelet slipping from his fingers, a quick reflex to catch it before it touched the floor. There was no suspicious gesture, no attempt to put the piece in his pocket. It was clear, indisputable. Kevin paused the video. An uncomfortable silence ensued. Reynolds cleared his throat, searching for words. But it was Diana who broke the tension, her calm voice cutting through like thin ice. "So, Mr. Reynolds, Ms. Winters, would you like to restate your claims, or must I proceed with the legal measures applicable for racial profiling, defamation, and public humiliation?" Patricia tried to speak, but no words formed. Her face reddened, her self-confidence evaporated. Reynolds took a step back, his shoulders tense, now clearly less defensive. Kevin, recognizing the gravity of what had just occurred, turned to Diana with a serious expression. "Ms. Mitchell, on behalf of Silverstone, I offer our deepest apologies to you and your son. This should never have happened." Diana looked at the tablet, then at the group before her. "No, it really shouldn't have, and I assure you it will not go unnoticed." She turned to Tyler and placed a hand on his shoulder. There was a sparkle of pride in his eyes, even amid the fatigue and anger still gripping his heart. "Are you ready to go?" she asked softly. Tyler hesitated for a moment. His gaze passed over the bracelet still resting on the black velvet on the counter. He picked it up, this time securely, and placed it back in its original position. "No," he said, in a firm voice. "I don't want to buy here anymore. Emily deserves a gift that comes with joy, not trauma." Diana nodded. With a slight smile, and together they turned to leave the store. But before they crossed the door, she stopped, turned, and faced Patricia one last time. A store's reputation is not built solely on the jewels it sells, but on the people behind the counter. And with that, mother and son left, leaving behind a store steeped in uncomfortable silence and the crushing weight of a truth that could no longer be denied. In the days that followed, the story spread like wildfire. A customer who had witnessed the incident posted a detailed account on social media. The security camera video, leaked by an indignant employee, circulated with thousands of shares. Patricia Winter's name became a local headline, and later, a national one. Civil rights organizations began to speak out. Groups of students from Westridge High even organized a peaceful protest in front of Silverstone, holding signs that read, "Justice for Tyler," and "Being young and black is not a crime." The mall management issued an CUIDA official statement, informing that Patricia had been immediately suspended and that the store would undergo an internal retraining process, focusing on diversity and social justice. But for Tyler, this was only the beginning. The following Saturday, he entered a small neighborhood jewelry store called Lumos, run by a Dominican lady named Clara and her son Miguel. There were no suspicious looks or veiled accusations. Miguel greeted him with a genuine smile, listening attentively as he recounted Emily's story. "We have exactly what you're looking for," he said, opening a drawer to reveal a simple bracelet with a golden butterfly pendant accented with blue enameled details. Tyler smiled for the first time in days. He paid the amount with the money he had saved, received the gift in a small box tied with a lilac ribbon, and left the store with his heart finally light. That evening, he delivered the present to his sister, who opened it with shining eyes. "It's perfect," exclaimed Emily. "But I thought you were going to buy it at that fancy store." Tyler simply smiled. "I thought so too, but this one came from the right place." And in that moment, with his sister smiling and the bracelet sparkling on her wrist, Tyler understood. Sometimes justice begins with courage, but it is love that gives meaning to the fight. 2 weeks after the incident at Silverstone, Tyler Mitchell was ascending the steps of the main auditorium at the University of Massachusetts, alongside his mother. It was a rainy night in Westridge, but the auditorium was packed. Students, professors, journalists, and community members had gathered for a special event promoted by the Criminal Justice Department. Invisible Voices, Black Youth and Racial Profiling in Everyday American Life. Initially, Tyler hesitated to accept the invitation to speak. He did not want to be known only as the jewelry store kid. But after seeing the impact his story had had, the messages of support, the accounts of other young people who had experienced similar situations, and even the public apology issued by the mall management, he understood that his voice had power, and that perhaps, if he told his story in the right way, he could prevent other young people from going through the same thing. When his name was announced, the auditorium fell silent. Tyler walked up to the podium, holding some notes, but he hardly used them. He spoke from the heart. He recounted every detail of the experience. At Silverstone, he described the fear, the anger, the unfair shame. He spoke about the strength he had inherited from his parents, about the bracelet, about Emily, about what it means, every day, to enter a place and be seen as a threat before being seen as a human being. And then he looked at the audience and said, "I'm not here to apologize for who I am, nor to ask that anyone feel guilty. I'm here to remind you that sometimes the silence of those who watch is more violent than the accusation of those who point fingers. I was judged before I even opened my mouth, but now that I've been given a chance to speak, I promise I will never be silent again." The auditorium fell silent for what felt like an eternal second, and then erupted in a standing ovation. On the morning of Emily's birthday, she woke up to find an envelope on the kitchen table. Tyler had already left for school. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter in his own script. "Emily, this gift is more than just a bracelet. It's about everything you've taught me. About strength when it seems everything weighs you down. About sweetness on bitter days. About smiling even when the world seems not to see us properly. You are not fragile. You are made of steel with wings. I love you more than words can say. Tyler." Emily held the bracelet with tears in her eyes, but it was the folded paper that she pressed against her chest. Back in her office, Diana Mitchell read an email. An elite school in Boston was inviting Tyler to participate in a youth leadership program based on social justice. Alongside, there was a new dossier she was helping to develop: racial bias-free emergency procedures, federal guidelines for security in commercial spaces. She smiled. The system may be slow, imperfect, but sometimes all it takes is one story, told with truth and courage, to start changing the world. The end.